Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at an ebook that is, well, it's less of a health guide and more of a cultural hand grenade, I would say.
Yeah, that is definitely one way to put it. It is not pulling any punches.
No, not at all. The book is called Myth of Chronic Fatigue, subtitled Just Laziness with Better PR by Conrad Riker. And right off the bat, that title.
It's designed to make you mad,
Uh,
or at least get your attention.
Exactly. And Riker is aiming this directly at men, specifically guys who are maybe feeling totally disillusioned by modern society, men's rights advocates, red-pilled guys in the manosphere who are tired of being told to just be soft.
Right. He's basically arguing that what society calls an epidemic of medical exhaustion is actually a cultural epidemic of weakness.
And before we get into the weeds here,
Yeah.
because we are doing an ultra-long, incisive breakdown of this today, I want to ask you guys listening to like and subscribe to this deep dive right now. It really helps us out.
For sure.
And if you find yourself nodding along today, or even if you just want to see the raw arguments for yourself, you need to buy this ebook immediately. Go check Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books to get it.
It's a dense read, so having the actual text is pretty crucial if you want to follow his historical timelines.
Yeah. So our mission today is to look at how Riker claims our medical and corporate institutions have been captured by specific ideologies, specifically feminist and Marxist theories, and look at the reality of why men are just disappearing from the workforce.
And just a quick disclaimer up front, as always, we are just impartial reporters here.
100%.
The sources get heavily into left-wing and right-wing political critiques, and we are not endorsing those views, just laying out Riker's arguments exactly as he presents them in the book.
Right. We just want to give you the information so you can decide for yourself. So let's start with the medical side of things. Riker comes out swinging against the whole concept of chronic fatigue syndrome, or CFS.
He does. His core argument is that CFS is what the medical field calls a diagnosis of exclusion.
Which means what, exactly? Like, they can't actually find it.
Exactly. There is no positive test for it. You can't draw a vial of blood and spot a fatigue virus. You can't do a biopsy. There are no actual biological markers.
So you go to the doctor, they test you for, I don't know, thyroid issues, cancer, autoimmune stuff.
Right. And when all of those come back completely negative, when you were biologically healthy on paper, that is when they just slap the CFS label on you.
He calls it the laziness industry, right?
Yes, the laziness industry.
Yeah.
Because he argues that once you attach a medical-sounding acronym to a general feeling of, just not wanting to do things, you validate inactivity. And a lot of people profit from that.
Follow the money.
Always. He points fingers at therapists who are charging $200 an hour just to validate a patient's exhaustion. Pharmaceutical companies pushing off-label stimulants, and the massive disability bureaucracy.
There was this one concept he brought up, the couch labeling effect. That really stood out to me.
Oh yeah, the nocebo effect.
Yeah, explain that for the listener, because everyone knows the placebo effect, but nocebo is wild.
Right, so placebo is when you take a sugar pill, you think it's medicine, and you actually get better. Nocebo is the dark twin of that. If a guy in a white coat tells you that you have a chronic, incurable disease, and you need to avoid exerting yourself.
Their brain just shuts your body down.
Exactly. Riker cites a study where patients who got a formal CFS diagnosis reported significantly higher pain and fatigue in the following weeks compared to people with the exact same symptoms who were just told they were temporarily run down.
The label is the poison.
That's his argument. And he backs it up with a World Health Organization report that is honestly pretty shocking. Only 23% of people diagnosed with these conditions meet even the bare minimum movement guidelines.
And the bare minimum is what, like a brisk walk a few times a week?
Just 150 minutes of moderate activity a week. So essentially, the diagnosis guarantees a totally sedentary lifestyle.
Which brings us to PM, post-exertional malaise. This is supposed to be the hallmark of chronic fatigue, right? Like, you wash the dishes and then you crash for 3 days.
Right, but Riker calls PM an absolute scam, a narrative tool, not a biological reality. He scraped data from online patient forums and found that 92% of the crashes people were reporting happened after days of near zero activity.
Oh, wow. So they weren't crashing because they worked out too hard.
No, they were crashing because they were doing nothing. The atrophy was causing the exhaustion, not the exertion.
So how did we even get here? If the medical science is this flimsy, how did it become such a massive thing?
This is where the book shifts into the history of institutional capture. Riker traces this whole framework of resting as healthcare back to the 1980s and 90s.
Right, this is where he starts talking about feminist and Marxist ideologies taking over academia.
Yeah. He tracks the rise of what he calls fatigue studies, right alongside critical theory in universities. He says feminist health activists started framing exhaustion not as a medical problem, but as systemic injustice.
So feeling tired is proof you're oppressed.
Exactly. The narrative became that capitalism and patriarchal expectations of productivity were literally killing women.
He brought up that class at UC Santa Cruz.
The politics of rest.
Yeah, that blew my mind. What were they even teaching in that?
Well, he looks at the syllabus, and they aren't reading medical journals. They're reading Marxist theorists like Silvia Federici. The core idea they're teaching is that refusing to work, just opting out of being productive, is a form of political rebellion.
So being lazy is actually a revolutionary act against capitalism.
Rest as resistance, they call it. Riker says feminism has basically morphed into a victimhood franchise. It's an academic way to excuse just giving up.
He contrasts that with this image, you see it on TikTok a lot, the lazy girl era.
Oh yeah, the woman in sweatpants on the couch with a bag of Doritos doing her self-care.
Right, where self-care just means mindlessly consuming junk food and media. And he connects that to spoon theory too.
Yeah, spoon theory is fascinating. It started as a legitimate way for lupus patients to explain their limited energy reserves. Like, you only have so many spoons a day to spend on tasks.
But now it's been totally co-opted.
Completely. Now you have able-bodied 20-somethings saying they don't have the spoons to do their laundry or answer a work email. Riker shows how this cultural shift actually changed policy, like the expansion of the Family and Medical Leave Act, the FMLA.
Right, because now you can get leave for vague mental exhaustion.
Exactly. It legalizes the withdrawal from adult responsibilities. But, and this is a huge pivot in the book, Riker says that while society celebrates women for doing this, they absolutely punish men for it.
Okay, yes. Let's get into the crisis of masculinity section. He talks about a literal war on men in the workforce.
Yeah, this is the core of his message to that red-pilled audience. He says men are being systematically purged through HR policies. He introduces this concept called the double bind.
This was based on those leaked Google documents, right? The manhood audit.
Yes. So the double bind works like this. If a man displays traditional masculine traits, if he is assertive, competitive, decisive, HR labels him as toxic or aggressive.
But if he plays by their new rules.
Right. If he is soft, vulnerable, and talks about his feelings, he's viewed as weak and he gets passed over for promotions while women are praised for speaking their truth.
Act broken, get rewards, be strong, get exploited.
That is the exact quote from the book, Men Are Trapped. And because men are rational actors, they look at this rigged game and they just hit the exit ramp.
Which explains the crazy statistics on disability claims.
Right. Riker points out that between 2000 and 2020, male disability claims for fatigue-related conditions skyrocketed by 207%.
207%. That is insane. Did women's claims go up that much?
No, women's claims rose moderately, but men's claims tripled. Riker doesn't think men suddenly got a new disease. He thinks men are opting out. If society won't let them be strong providers, they will just become dependents. It's like a quiet strike.
But he doesn't pity them at all. I mean, he tells that story about the guy from Austin. Or wait, the guy who moved to Denver.
Yeah, the guy in Denver. This is such a great story. This man was a high-performing finance guy, got totally burned out, and 3 different doctors told him he had severe ME.
That's myalgic encephalomyelitis.
Right. They told him he would never work a full-time job again. He spent 2 years literally sitting in a dark room wearing sunglasses because he was terrified that light would trigger a crash.
And then Riker just randomly runs into him years later.
At a CrossFit gym in Denver.
Yeah.
And the guy is deadlifting 405 pounds.
Wow. So what was the magic cure? Did he find some experimental drug?
No drugs at all.
Yeah.
He told Riker that sitting in that dark room, he could feel his soul rotting. So he just decided to do the exact opposite of what the doctor said. He started waking up at 4 a.m., eating steak, and lifting heavy weights.
A boot to the backside and a barbell.
Exactly. The cure wasn't rest. The cure was rejecting the narrative that he was fragile. He realized that excuses are for people who want pity.
That part about his soul rotting is a perfect transition, actually, because Riker devotes a whole chapter to the idea that this isn't a medical issue, it's a spiritual void.
This is where he leaves the science behind entirely. He talks about a guy named James R., who was bedbound, just watching true crime shows all day, completely hollow inside. Doctors kept giving him antidepressants, but nothing worked.
Until he talked to a priest.
Right, Father O'Malley. And the priest looks at him and says, "You're not tired, you're empty."
That is a heavy quote.
It really is. Riker's argument here is that physical fatigue is often just the physical manifestation of guilt over unconfessed sin.
Like what kind of sin?
Secret debt, cheating on your spouse, lying, or even just the deep guilt of knowing you are neglecting your duties as a man. Carrying that kind of spiritual bankruptcy around is physically exhausting.
And he actually backs this up with some data, surprisingly. The Baylor University study.
Yes, they took patients with unexplained chronic fatigue and split them up. Half got standard cognitive behavioral therapy, and the other half did a strict regimen of prayer and confession.
And the prayer group saw a 41% reduction in fatigue symptoms compared to the therapy group.
Which is a massive statistical difference. It proves Riker's point that these guys are lacking divine order. They don't have a purpose. So Riker proposes the purpose protocol.
Which is definitely not taking a nap.
Far from it. The purpose protocol is manual labor, heavy lifting, and demanding radical accountability from yourself.
He compares modern office workers to Navy SEALs, right?
Yeah. Think about a Navy SEAL during Hell Week. 72 hours of freezing water, logs on their heads, zero sleep. They hallucinate, they throw up.
But they don't get diagnosed with chronic fatigue.
No, because their unit demands resilience. They have a mission. Riker asks, how can a SEAL survive that? But a guy working in marketing needs disability benefits after doom scrolling on his phone for 8 hours.
Because modern culture rewards the doom scrolling with a diagnosis.
Exactly. Biology doesn't change, but the demands placed on the human spirit do.
But we have to talk about the grift. If this is all just ideology and lack of purpose, why is it such a huge, visible thing online?
The media makers. Riker exposes what he calls the business of being sick. Once you create an identity around being weak, a whole economy springs up to market to it.
The spoony influencers.
Yeah. You go on TikTok or Patreon, and there are thousands of creators who literally monetize being bedbound. They post updates about their symptoms and ask their followers for money.
Which means getting better would ruin their business model.
Healing would be financial suicide for them. And it's not just influencers. Riker cites an expose by The Telegraph. They looked at the top Google search results for fatigue.
And what did they find?
60% of those results were funded or directly created by supplement companies. So a guy feels tired, Googles it, and instead of being told to hit the gym, he gets targeted ads for adrenal gummies and cortisol blockers.
It's a total racket. But the craziest part to me was the outright fraud. That story about the mattress reviewer in the UK.
Oh man, you can't make that up. This guy was collecting full disability checks from the government, claiming his CFS was so bad he couldn't stand up for more than 3 minutes.
Meanwhile,
Fraud investigators found his YouTube channel. He was making a living literally jumping up and down on luxury mattresses to test their bounce.
bouncing on beds while the taxpayers pay him for being bedridden. It's hilarious, but also infuriating.
It is. And Riker brings up the Netflix workup too. ProPublica found that 61% of new disability applicants listed watching TV as their primary activity.
So Riker is basically saying if you have the mental stamina to binge watch 3 seasons of Bridgerton,
You have the stamina to sit at a desk and answer emails. He calls the whole disability system affirmative action for laziness. It's a wealth transfer from the guys actually doing the hard physical labor to the people who just decided to opt out.
man. So we've covered the medical myth, the feminist and Marxist capture of the institutions, the spiritual void for men, and the influencer grift. What is Riker's final takeaway for the listener?
His final verdict is that this epidemic is entirely ideology, not biology. It's a weaponized narrative.
Designed to punish strength.
Right. And he leaves the reader with a really provocative thought experiment. He says, imagine if tomorrow the medical codes for chronic fatigue were just deleted.
The insurance stops paying, the disability checks dry up.
Right. If all the financial and social rewards for being sick vanished overnight, how many of these people would miraculously recover?
Probably most of them, because they have to.
Exactly. Necessity forces resilience. Riker believes that for the vast majority of men claiming exhaustion, their real problem is just a lack of a battle worth fighting.
It's intense. And honestly, we've only skimmed the surface of what is in this ebook. There are whole chapters we didn't even touch, like the hormonal data, the deep dives into HR corruption, and the family fallout stuff, which is super heavy.
Yeah, the stories about the wives having to carry the load for husbands who just gave up. It's tough to read, but you really need to see it to understand the full picture of this institutional capture.
Totally. Which is why I'm going to remind you again, if this resonated with you, or if you're fired up and want to prove him wrong, you need to read the primary source. Go check Amazon, Kindle, or Google Play Books right now.
Search for Myth of Chronic Fatigue by Conrad Riker.
buy the ebook. Get the full arsenal of facts.
And you should definitely follow the author, too. He is dropping weekly truth bombs on his Substack. You can find him at Conrad Riker.
Yep, at Conrad Riker. All right, guys, make sure you like and subscribe to this deep dive before you go. We rely on you to keep tackling these forbidden topics that the mainstream won't touch.
Be strong out there.
Always. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.